So you've been drafted, maybe you were a hive ganganger who ran out of luck, maybe you're a farmer's seventh child, maybe someone on your planet owed the Munitorum a favor, doesn't matter, congratulations, you're now one of the billions of warm bodies known as the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard. If you want the classic name, your job is simple: hold the line until you die, then hope your replacement doesn't trip over your corpse too hard. You are a cog in the galaxy's biggest meat grinder. If you're lucky, you'll live long enough to learn the rhythm of war. If you're really lucky, you'll forget what peace ever felt like. The Imperium of Man is not a place built for hope, and neither is its military. This isn't a story of glory, heroism, or grand strategy. This is about trenches that stretch for miles across acid-choked wastelands, about comrades who vanish between heartbeats, about orders that make no sense issued by officers who haven't slept in a week. The life of a guardsman is not one of choices. It is a life of endurance, submission, and routine horror. You will witness the impossible, fight the unthinkable, and be told you are expendable every step of the way. But despite all this, despite the absurd cruelty of it all, some guardsmen survive, some find purpose, some even find a kind of pride, not in victory but in standing when no one else can. This guide won't promise you survival, but it will offer something just as rare in the grim, dark future perspective. What follows is a detailed breakdown of what it means to wear flak armor and carry a lace gun in a universe that doesn't care if you live or die. Your new life begins now. Your odds of survival depend massively on where you come from, how you got conscripted, and which regiment you're dumped into. And while you don't get much say in the matter, knowing how the system works might give you a tiny edge, a crack in the machinery you can squeeze through. The Imperium recruits from every type of world imaginable. If you're from a hive world, odds are you were either volunteered by a local gang boss to keep the heat off, or plucked from a penal list as a convenient body with a pulse. Hive regiments like the Necro-Endans are tough, sure, but they also get thrown into meat grinder urban war zones because they're used to it. Agri-world conscripts, you're strong, sunburnt, and have no idea what a laser gun is, so expect to be used as mobile cover until you learn. If you're from a fortress world or a feudal one, you might have grown up thinking war was glorious until the first orc charges you. Morale varies, but trauma is guaranteed if you somehow get to choose. Say you're reincarnated with a smidge of meta-awareness. Aim for regiments like the Armageddon Steel Legion or Vistroan's harsh worlds, yes, but with real training and gear. Avoid the Katachin jungle fighters unless you're part dinosaur. Stay far away from any unit with penal legion or death cause in the name. Unless dying heroically is your hobby, your best bet, find a world where the guard is a career, not a punishment. Forge worlds, highborn hive spires, or even PDF units from underpopulated sectors. They get folded into bigger regiments with better logistics, and if you're lucky, officers who won't get you killed for sneezing out of rhythm. Survival begins with conscription, and if you can't dodge the draft, at least try to dodge the worst regiments. Training in the Imperial Guard is wildly inconsistent. Some regiments drill for years in hardened bunkers, others are given a pep talk and a shovel. Whether your boot camp lasts 3 weeks or 3 hours depends entirely on where you came from and how badly the guard needs warm bodies. Let's be clear, proper training can save your life. A hive world militia might throw you into the grinder with nothing but flak armor and a prayer, while a regiment like the Death Cause of will turn you into a walking war machine through relentless discipline and live fire exercises. Of course there's a catch: doesn't train you to survive, it trains you to die correctly, obediently, silently. These soldiers are given gas masks at birth and taught that personal survival is less important than imperial victory. Yes, they're elite, no, they're not a safe bet. So what should you be aiming for if you want to stay alive? Ideally attach yourself to a regiment that actually invests in training but isn't thrown into hopeless war zones by the departmental Munitorum every other week. Tempesticians, for example, are an elite force trained in specialized kill missions and surgical precision. They're the stormtroopers of the guard, used sparingly and with care because each one is expensive, highly trained, and actually valuable. They may be dropped behind enemy lines or into Xenos kill nests, but at least they have a plan. Better yet, if you're somehow incredibly lucky or have the right background, you might end up with the Lucifer Blacks, the ceremonial elite who guard terror itself. But let's be honest, your chances of getting into a unit that guards the Imperial Palace are about the same as becoming a Primarch. The trick, if you're serious about surviving, is to stay in that sweet spot, trained enough to not die immediately but not so elite that you're treated like a precision scalpel in the hands of a mad surgeon. Think less frontline trench meathead and more logistics escort with occasional glory. If you can fake competence, stay quiet, and avoid being volunteered for heroics, you just might make it to your third deployment with all your limbs attached. Maybe so. You've survived conscription. And training. Now it's time to gear up, and this is where your odds of survival either get a minor boost or take a nosedive straight into the warp. In theory, every guardsman is equipped with the same standard loadout: a flak vest, a las gun, a handful of charge packs, and maybe, if your quartermaster isn't already dead, some rations and a canteen. In practice, your kit depends entirely on your regiment's prestige and connections. The famous Cadian pattern lace gun is the poster child of the Astra Militarum. It's durable, reliable, and laughably underpowered on its own. It won't pierce power armor or even some thick hides, but it's easy to mass produce and won't jam when covered in xenoguts. If you're lucky enough to be issued one with a functioning power cell, congratulations, you're now qualified to lightly annoy most enemies of the Imperium. Your flak armor won't stop much more than shrapnel or a last bolt either, so your best defense is still don't get shot. The good news is that some regiments do better than others. The death call of might have a grave waiting for every soldier, but they also have access to trench warfare equipment, grenades, and heavier artillery. Thanks to their ruthless efficiency and constant high kill counts, the Tempesticians again rise above. They don't just get better las guns, they wield hotshot las guns, reinforced carapace armor, and sometimes even refractor fields or advanced Orpex tech. It's the closest a human gets to feeling like a space marine without losing your sense of fear or bone structure. So how does this help you survive? First, pay attention to your regiment's status and logistics chain. If your commanding officer drinks with a tech priest, you might actually see gear that works. Second, worship your tools literally. In the Imperium, machine spirits are real enough to matter, and a well-maintained lay gun blessed with the proper rights will fail you less often than one scavenged from a corpse. And third, if you can't get better gear, try to befriend someone who has it. Medic units, Vox operators, even drivers, they're issued better protection and don't always see the front lines. In a galaxy where death comes screaming on wings of fire or chittering xenoteeth, your gear won't save you, but it can give you a second more to run. And in the Guard, a second is everything. Your assigned role in the Astra Militarum plays a huge part in whether you're vaporized in the first hour of deployment or still breathing after the fourth campaign. Let's break it down, not by prestige but by raw survival potential. At the absolute bottom of the barrel sits the humble infantryman. You'll find yourself shoulder to shoulder with thousands of other poor bastards being marched into the jaws of a tyrannid swarm or charged into fortified kill zones. Your role: soak bullets. Maybe you'll take a trench, maybe you won't, but either way, your expendable infantry. Doctrine in the Guard is less about tactical finesse and more about send more bodies until it stops moving. Your best bet here: find cover, learn to dig, and try to get promoted into literally anything else. And for the love of the Emperor, don't volunteer for melee duty. A slight step up from the infantry is the armor division. If you're lucky enough to be assigned to a Leman Russ or Emperor wielding a Bane blade, you've got thick armor between you and the enemy. That's good. The bad news: you're a high-value target. Anti-tank fire, orbital strikes, and deep strike boarding parties love hunting tanks. You'll also be in constant danger from friendly fire, air bursts, and mechanical failures. Still, being in a tank gives you mobility, heat, and maybe even a working Vox, luxuries most guardsmen will never see. Then there's artillery: long distance ants, death gods, basilisks, manticores, and earth shakers can level city blocks from miles away. If you're crewing one of these, you'll likely be far from the front lines, encased in an armored vehicle and surrounded by ammunition. Yes, ammo dumps explode, and yes, you might get overrun during a surprise orc rush, but compared to frontline duty, this is practically retirement. The real trick is staying awake during long idle periods between barges. If you can master boredom and avoid shell mishaps, you've got solid odds at the top of the survival hierarchy. Support staff: Medicare units, supply handlers, Vox operators, logistics scribes. None of these roles are glamorous, but they're crucial and often deployed slightly behind the main force. You'll still get shot at, maybe even executed if someone higher up needs a scapegoat, but you're not expected to stand in the open and take bolter fire. If you can fake competence or speak technolingua, you might even get embedded with Mechanicus teams or field officers, giving you an extra buffer from death. Just don't stand too close to a commissar. So what's the takeaway? Survival isn't about strength, it's about utility and visibility. Be useful enough not to be discarded, but not important enough to be noticed. Artillery crew or supply runner might sound boring, but boring beats dead 9 times out of 10. I guess we should also talk about one of the greatest threats to every guardsman life: commissars. They're supposed to be shining beacons of courage and unbreakable will, charged with upholding morale, enforcing discipline, and ensuring that no guardsman breaks faith with the Imperium. In reality, they're the reason half your squad might get executed before even seeing an enemy. To a guardsman, a commissar isn't just an officer, they're a loaded bolt pistol Waiting for a reason, smile too much, heresy, frown too much, morale failure, stumble on a prayer, lack of faith. They are on paper there to prevent desertion and cowardice, but often they inspire more dread than the orcs you're being sent to fight. That said, they're not universally loathed. Some regiments genuinely respect their commissars, especially the rare ones who fight on the front lines, who draw fire and bleed with their men, but most guardsmen view them with a mix of fear, quiet resentment, and intense scrutiny. After all, in the guard everyone's watching their back, but with a commissar you're watching your front too. So how do you survive? 1. Shut up, look busy, speak the creed fluently, never question orders even when they're suicidal, never draw attention. Think of commissars as predators. They don't go for the strongest or the fastest, they go for the weird one in the corner who didn't salute fast enough. Blend in with the mass, be boring, and if your commissar is the gung-ho chain sword waving kind who charges at demons with a purity seal between their teeth, well, just try not to stand behind them when they get vaporized or in front of them when they're angry. Now, if you're wondering whether becoming a commissar yourself is the secret golden ticket to survival, think again. It's a trap. Commissars are under just as much scrutiny as the men they police. If you show weakness, hesitation, or political missteps, you're liable to be quietly removed or loudly misplaced in a sudden bout of battlefield mayhem. Commissars are also expected to lead by example, which often means charging first and dying loud. Not to mention they are deeply unpopular in most regiments unless you're as charismatically devious as Kiefer's Kane or as fanatically unstoppable as Commissar Yorick. Chances are your own men will fantasize about your death every day. Some might even make it happen. Bottom line, stick to the shadows, stay a grunt, or better yet, try to weasel your way into the Tempest Science. They don't need commissars breathing down their necks because they're already fanatically disciplined, heavily trained, extremely well equipped, and most importantly used sparingly. It's one of the few roles in the guard where survival doesn't directly hinge on hiding from your own leadership. So you've survived training, gotten your gear, avoided commissars, and maybe even snagged a halfway decent assignment. Congratulations. Now comes the part where people start dying in piles. Welcome to combat in the Astra Militarum, a never-ending parade of mud, screaming, and desperate prayers to a god emperor who, statistically speaking, doesn't answer. The battlefield isn't glorious, it's an industrial nightmare. You'll find yourself digging trenches with your bare hands, choking on promethium smoke, and watching friends die before they even hear the order to fire. You may hold a position for days only to be told to charge a fortified enemy gun line for reasons that no one explains, and no one survives in some cases. You'll be deployed in zero atmosphere boarding actions where the first casualty is your lungs, or dropped into meat grinder campaigns where your only job is to die in place so the regiment behind you has time to aim. And just when you think you've seen the worst, someone in high command uses the word valor, which is code for you're all about to be sacrificed for optics. But not all regiments fight the same way. Kittens, for example, fight like walking traps, ambushes, sabotage, and guerrilla tactics. They survive by outwitting enemies and outlasting the jungle. If you can handle the toxic wildlife of your own deployment zone trying to eat you every night, you might live long enough to kill something else. Death Corps, on the other hand, approach warfare like it's a form of confession. They march into artillery fire with the calm of men trying to earn death, and they usually do avoid their campaigns unless you're looking for a quick, meaningless death and a lifetime of digging trenches. Regimental culture isn't just a quirk, it's the difference between dead in an hour and dead in a week. Now let's talk enemies, because choosing who you die to is a critical part of survival. Here's the short version: avoid chaos at all costs. You're not dying in those battles, you're getting unmade. Demons don't just kill you, they break your soul apart like it's a puzzle made of screams. If they don't consume you outright, they'll warp you into something unrecognizable. Tyranids are only marginally better. If chaos melts your soul, Tyranids will melt your body slowly with acid claws or psychic screeching that fries your brain while you're still conscious. The Drakari will do things to you that you cannot possibly imagine. They don't kill you, they keep you. You don't want that. Your best bets are orcs and maybe the toe. Yes, orcs are violent, brutal, and wildly unpredictable, but they kill fast and they're stupid. You can actually survive a campaign against orcs if you keep your head down and your loss gun pointed in the right direction. Plus, orcs enjoy the fight more than the outcome, which means they're more likely to lose interest than chase you into a trench. The toe are a rare case. If you're lucky and your regiment surrenders fast enough, they might put you in a re-education camp instead of a body bag. That said, don't count on their mercy lasting long. They are still Xenos, so if you find yourself picking deployments, remember, die fast or die smart. Avoid cult-infested worlds, hive wars against chaos, warp bands, and anything that mentions bioforums. In the mission brief, so you want to survive the Imperial Guard, then forget glory, forget honor. Survival is a matter of picking your poison carefully and praying the Emperor's indifference works in your favor. If you have the grit, reflexes and raw luck to make it into the Tempesta Science, that's your best bet. They're the elite for a reason. Top tier gear, advanced training and precision operations. Sure, they get sent into dangerous missions, but they're not used like cannon fodder. They're valuable, and in the Imperium, being valuable is as close as it gets to a survival strategy, plus without commissar breathing down your neck and with better command structures. The Science are one of the few groups where competence actually matters more than body count. Barring that, artillery crews, logistics regiments and support staff are your next best options. The fewer trenches you crawl through, the better. If you're not important enough to be targeted, you might just live long enough to file out your retirement. Paperwork. Assuming anyone remembers you existed, just don't stand out, don't complain and don't attract attention in the Guard. Invisibility is better than valor. Now, if you enjoyed this guide and want to see more like it, hit that like button, subscribe and let me know in the comments which regiment should we cover next. Want to learn how to survive the death jungles of Katachan, the boot stamping discipline of the Morian Iron Guard, or maybe you're curious if there's even a point to surviving each of those? Could be its own survival guide, part law, part practical. If slightly desperate advice, you've got options. They're all bad, but some are worse than others, and in the grim darkness of the far future, that's the closest thing to a choice you're going to get.